All right. Okay. So just a quick overview. Today we will go over national service as an overview. We'll also do a quick overview about Volunteer Tennessee. And then we'll get into the meat of today, which is deciding if AmeriCorps is right for your agency. And then we'll go through the 2026 AmeriCorps State and Notice of Funding Opportunity application process. So during this, if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to throw them in the chat. My coworker Anthony, who you see on the screen, will be monitoring the chat. And then also, if you would like some more clarity on a question, we will have a question and answer at the end. But by all means, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Raise your hand, and we will get around to you guys. So, um, just a little bit of housekeeping. Because this is recorded and we want to make sure that everybody is able to hear all the details, we just ask that you stay muted except during the question and answer. And like I've said, you're welcome to put your questions in the chat. We'll also give you guys our email addresses at the end of the session if you have a little bit more technical questions that you may need a little bit of one-on-one emailing about. So don't worry about it. We'll give you guys our information so that you are able to get in contact with us. But please ask questions during the designated Q&A times if you want to, come off of mute. And that'll be towards the end of our session today. So my name is Candace. For those of you guys who don't know me, I am the training and special events manager here. I am going to turn it over to Lizzie Lemieux, who will be leading our fabulous session today. But before we get into that, I'm going to hand the mic over to our executive director, Jim Snell, for our official welcome, and then we'll go ahead and jump right into it, guys.
Thanks, Candace, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. I think we've got some maybe familiar names, so folks who are at least familiar with what Volunteer Tennessee does and with AmeriCorps. But even if you are familiar with AmeriCorps, there are a few changes this year with the Notice of Funding Opportunity, so we want to make sure that everyone understands the differences. And for those of you who are new to the AmeriCorps system, we hope to be able to give you a brief overview of what's required for the application process. So thank you all for joining us, and I'll turn it back over to Lizzie.
All right, thanks so much, Jim. Yeah, so we can get right into it. Although before we do, I was hoping folks could put their level of experience with AmeriCorps in the chat. So if this is your first year, you could say you have 0 years of experience with AmeriCorps. If you're a returning program, you could put how many years you've had your AmeriCorps program. That would just give me a sense of the audience for today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just national service, the overview. So national service is a large umbrella. AmeriCorps falls under it. Sometimes we like to think of it as like a domestic Peace Corps. And you can see on the screen, we've got a little bit of history, and we won't go through all of the pieces, but essentially there were these existing national service programs that had been developed under different administrations, and they were rolled into one agency, the AmeriCorps Agency, which was created in 1993. It had a different name originally, but now we call it the AmeriCorps Agency. All right. So the AmeriCorps Agency provides funding to provide resources to organizations proposing to engage AmeriCorps members in evidence-based or evidence-informed interventions that strengthen communities. And they've identified 6 focus areas. You can see them on your screen. We've got disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, and veterans and military families. So to make a difference in these focus areas, the AmeriCorps agencies provides Americans with the opportunities to serve by administering a number of programs. And there are a number of different types of programs that we'll see on the next slide, and they each have their own funding opportunity. Of course, today we're focusing on AmeriCorps state grants for the state of Tennessee. And the AmeriCorps state and national program recruits, trains, and places AmeriCorps members to meet critical community needs. But yes, on this next slide, you'll see, and maybe we have to, yeah, so you'll see that there are a number of other programs. There's VISTA, that's focused more on capacity building. There's NCCC, which is a full-time residential program for folks ages 18 to 24, doing more short-term projects. And then there's AmeriCorps seniors with their own sort of portfolio of programs. And there's the foster grandparents with seniors serving as role models. There's senior companions, which helps seniors remain independent in their homes. Then there's RSVP, which engages seniors in volunteer activities in their community. So the major players and what they oversee. So state service commissions provide AmeriCorps funding to AmeriCorps state programs through our annual grant competitions. And we work closely with the regional office and the AmeriCorps agency. We're also charged with encouraging volunteerism in our state, and we often administer special volunteer initiatives. We'll get into those in a minute. But if you are interested in learning about other types of AmeriCorps grants, you should refer to, well, you can go to our website. We have some information on the Volunteer Tennessee website about VISTA, NCCC, National Direct. You can also go to the AmeriCorps.gov webpage and you can see the NOFOs that they have available. But we won't go into that too much because today we're focusing on how Volunteer Tennessee can support your agency. So Volunteer Tennessee, next slide, if you will. So our mission is to encourage volunteerism and community service. We do this through a variety of initiatives addressing education, public safety, and other human needs. We're located in Nashville, and we manage AmeriCorps grants, as I've said, specifically for single state programs, and we also consult with national programs. So that's kind of our AmeriCorps impact, but we also have a number of other initiatives. So we also administer volunteer center and youth civic engagement grants. We provide training and professional development at the Tennessee Conference on Volunteerism and Service Learning. That's coming up on Monday, March 9th. There's still time to get your tickets, I believe. We also recognize outstanding volunteers, businesses, nonprofits at the Governor's Volunteer Stars Awards. That's coming up on March 8th. Our Tennessee Serves Volunteer portal connects volunteers to volunteer opportunities. That's all online. You could check that out. We also have our Corporate Social Purpose Network, connecting businesses with resources to make a difference in their community. And our Community Emergency Response Team training teaches people about emergencies and disaster preparedness for themselves. And you can find more information about all of our initiatives on our website. All right, so of course, today we're talking about AmeriCorps. So to give you a little bit more of a sense of what's in our portfolio, as I said, we have 16 AmeriCorps programs, but we'll just take a look at a couple of those. So this first program is CAC AmeriCorps. That's an initiative of the Knox County Community Action Committee. They're focused on environmental stewardship. They serve Knox, Blount, Anderson, and Sevier counties. And they use a host site model, which means they partner with other organizations that have similar focuses, similar goals, and they place their members internally at KKC, CAC, but they also place them with community partners. That being said, CAC, AmeriCorps members, so KKC, CAC provides the training, the recruitment, and they'll bring the members together for service projects. So there is a sense of community with each other and with the larger community, but they're involved with many different activities like environmental education, improving public lands, and capacity building activities. Another program in our portfolio is Teach for America, and actually we have 2 Teach for America programs in our portfolio, so this is kind of a double whammy. There's Nashville, Chattanooga, and Memphis, and they're interesting because they're a professional corps. Well, they're interesting for many reasons, but one thing that's interesting is they're a professional corps. So their members are earn a salary from the school where they teach instead of a living allowance. They're otherwise eligible for the same benefits as AmeriCorps members, but usually we think of AmeriCorps members as stipended. So they earn a living allowance, a stipend, they don't earn a salary, they're not employees. But a professional program, that's a little bit different. They can be employees of the school system or another field if that was your program. But as a professional corps, TFA has to show in their application that the community they're serving has a shortage of professionals in that field. So if you're proposing a professional corps, you have to demonstrate that there's a shortage of professionals in that field in the area that you're serving. And our last example is the Housing First Service Corps, and that is an initiative of the Appalachian Regional Coalition on Homelessness. Similarly to CAC, they use a host site model, so they partner with other organizations, and they also place members internally, so their members are providing frontline services to clients to help them ultimately obtain safe and stable housing. And they're focused on economic opportunity and healthy futures. All right. So in those descriptions, I kind of hinted at some of the benefits of an AmeriCorps program. So in addition to benefiting the communities that they serve, AmeriCorps programs benefit the managing agency and the members enrolled. So agencies will enjoy increased capacity, increased visibility, and long-term, potentially a stronger field of candidates for either your agency staff or just the field in general. Like with Teach for America, the goal is to just have more trained teachers available. And members in turn will earn a living allowance throughout their term of service and an education award at the end of their term of service. Full-time members or members serving in a full-time role, so that's like 35 hours a week or more, are eligible for healthcare, childcare, and then all members are eligible to or entitled to request student loan deferment and forbearance. Of course, agencies also have to invest in the AmeriCorps program. So while the program provides some funding, while your grant will provide some funding, it won't be enough to cover all of the costs of running a program. So you will need to secure additional cash in-kind resources, and that will be your match. Potentially, we'll get into matching requirements. Some kinds of grants require match, some don't. But whether or not a match is required, your agency will need to invest considerable time and resources into the application and the management of the grant. You'll see that in the application, it's required that you describe the roles and structure of the staff overseeing the program. So typical roles or typical activities that staff might manage are grant compliance, recruitment, training, supervision, invoice submission, monitoring. And we see most programs have a dedicated program director and then a separate designated financial fiscal staff member. That separation of duties is beneficial. And then, of course, Volunteer Tennessee is investing in your program as well. In addition to providing funding, we will also have periodic trainings. We provide as needed support and monitoring. All right, so who is eligible for an AmeriCorps state grant? Most nonprofits, higher education institutions, local governments are eligible to apply. You'll want to make sure that you meet the other eligibility requirements as described in the NOFO. So we'll get to the NOFO in a minute, but big picture, nonprofits and government agencies. And if you want to explore that a little bit more, you'll go to the NOFO. And then if you want to explore if AmeriCorps is right for your agency, we recommend that you investigate your organizational readiness by referring to the organization, Is My Organization Ready form, which you can find on the VT funding opportunities page. Those big picture items, you need staff capacity, strong fiscal systems, and ability to comply with federal funding. But this document will really break it down and allow you to see where you are. All right, so we've reached a moment for questions. Let's check in. I don't know, do we have any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat just yet.
All right. All right, well then we can continue going unless anybody wants to. I don't know quite how WebEx works. I don't know if you can raise your hand or just put something in there.
Yes, you can. So, Anthony, to see when you see all of the attendees that are there, you'll be able to see their hand raised when the attendee pops up. So if there's anybody, you'll be able to see it there.
All right, awesome. Well, it looks like we don't have anything. So sorry, Candace, we can continue with our PowerPoint. All right, so we're getting into the NOFO. That's the reason we're all here. And you can find the NOFO on our webpage, on the funding opportunities page specifically. And maybe you want to open it up right now because we'll be referring to it throughout. Maybe you want to download it, bookmark this page, pretty important stuff. So overall, AmeriCorps provides grant funding over a 3-year period. But while the project is approved for a 3-year period, funding is awarded annually. So this NOFO is for applicants looking to begin a 3-year grant cycle, so new applicants who have never done anything looking to begin a 3-year grant cycle, recompeting applicants who have already had a grant cycle but are looking to begin another 3-year grant cycle, and continuation applicants who are in their first or second year of funding going into their second or third year of funding. All right. So, could we go back a page? Yeah, great. So this is the AmeriCorps Funding Opportunities webpage. You will find, of course, the NOFO, and you have to read that together with the important additional documents. So you'll see there's a little drop-down menu with all those additional documents. We'll go into those in a minute, but you'll also find resources on this page. There's a logic model worksheet. There's a sample budget. There's an important date section. So this is a really important web page, and eventually, hopefully soon, maybe today or tomorrow, the recording of this session will be posted there along with any resources. You'll see in that grant information session drop down. And you can also find some more information about other AmeriCorps programs, National Direct and NCCC on this page. So let's take a look at those important additional documents. So, as I mentioned, you want to read the NOFO together with these documents. The NOFO isn't complete without these documents. And Okay, so we'll go through all of them first. So we have the mandatory supplemental information. That's going to provide terms, definitions, clarity. It's helpful if it's a good introduction, and it'll help you align your program with the funding priorities and performance measures that AmeriCorps is looking for. And you'll want to refer back to these. You don't want to just look at these one time, right? You want to keep going back to these documents. So next up, we've got the application instructions. This is your guide for navigating the entire process. So this is going to include grant submission, formatting guidelines, and also tips for writing a strong narrative. So the third document is performance measures. This is crucial because this is how your program's success is going to be evaluated. So this will give you guidance on selecting performance measures that align with your AmeriCorps focus area, and it's going to show you how you will report on the outcomes of your service activities. It's important to choose measures that are meaningful and directly tied to the impact of your program. And there's another document. There's an additional document for applicant determined performance measures. So you can look into that if there is not a national performance measure that works for your program, you can develop your own performance measure, and those guidelines are there. There's also the e-grants indirect cost rate user instructions, and this is for folks who are applying for an indirect cost rate or already have one approved. So that walks you through how to claim and document these costs in your budget. And finally, we have the OFMS, the Operational and Financial Management Survey, and that's mandatory for all new and recompeting applicants. So these documents, they're all critical for ensuring your application is complete and competitive. So make sure that you're reviewing all of these documents and you continue to review back to them throughout the process. All right. So let's look at some types of awards. So you'll see in the NOFO, formula and competitive. These are two terms that we use. So formula and competitive, it's talking about the funding pool that you are using or that you're applying to. Formula applicants essentially will compete against other applicants in the state of Tennessee, and then competitive applicants will compete with folks across the country. Formula applies to all new applicants. If you have had a planning grant, you're still a new applicant. So formula is your pathway for securing funding. And we ask that if you're new to AmeriCorps, you propose a formula program. On the other hand, competitive funding is for those who have already received AmeriCorps funding in the past and have been identified by Volunteer Tennessee as a good candidate for competitive. So competitive applicants should have already been notified by Volunteer Tennessee. If they are competitive, you know who you are. So otherwise, everybody else is a formula applicant. And that's important because there are different timelines and different requirements of formula and competitive applications. So pay attention to the applicable information for your award type. On the next slide, yes, we have cost reimbursement and fixed amount grants. So this is about your budget. So your cost reimbursement grants, it's a more traditional grant. There's a match requirement. I'd mentioned earlier that we would get into some grants have a match requirement, some don't. So it is the cost reimbursement grants that require a match requirement. I believe it starts at 24%, and it escalates according to how many years you've had AmeriCorps funding. And you submit a detailed budget. So mapping out how every dollar will be spent. It's going to include member travel and staff expenses, all kinds of different things, training, etc. Whereas for a fixed amount grant, that is based solely on the members enrolled and the hours that they serve. So it does not require as detailed of a budget. There's no match requirement, but keep in mind that means that your training or your travel, your staff won't be included in your budget. So your agency will have to cover those costs otherwise. All right, so as I mentioned, there are different timelines for formula and competitive. Important dates. Tomorrow is a big one. We have this notice of intent due on the 20th. So please complete that if you are a new or recompeting formula program. Our continuation formula programs are not required to submit, but you are welcome to. I know everybody likes to cover their bases. The applications will be due on March 18th at 3 p.m. and you'll want to make sure that your verification of SAM is also completed at this time. And we hope to inform applicants in June, at mid-end of June, of the funding decision and provide feedback to funded programs. It's a little bit different for competitive because we're asking competitive folks to complete a first draft by February 25th, also 3 p.m. And it's the same due date for competitive for the final draft as the formula program. So it's March 18th, 3 p.m. And again, only grantees with prior approval from Volunteer Tennessee should apply to competitive. All right, so let's break down this application. So first up, you have the standard form 424 face sheet, which is automatically generated when you complete all the data in the application. And importantly, it counts towards your narrative page limit. So then we get into the narrative. The narrative contains the executive summary, program design, organizational capability, cost effectiveness, evaluation plan summary. So your executive summary gives an overview of your proposed program. Your program design is going to lay out the structure and goals of your program. Your organizational capability is all about your organization's ability to successfully run the program. Cost effectiveness and budget adequacy ensure that your budget aligns with the program's needs and objectives. And the evaluation plan summary will describe how you'll measure success in your program. So that's all the narrative. So you've got 11 pages, including that standard 424 face sheet for your narrative. That will include all of that. You'll also have to submit performance measures and a logic model that show how your program will deliver impact. We'll get into what those look like in a moment. You'll have to complete the standard form 424A budget, which will detail your financial plan. For continuation applicants, there's a continuation changes section, and this is going to be the only section besides the executive summary that you will make changes to. All applicants might need to respond to clarification questions during the review process. And finally, you'll submit authorization, assurances, and certifications, as well as any additional documents required by AmeriCorps. And there is an additional document survey linked in the NOFO, so additional documents should be submitted to that survey. They're due at the same time as the application. And please don't submit any additional documents that are not asked for, as they will not be reviewed. And similarly, anything beyond the page limit will not be reviewed. All right, so let's look at how your application will be reviewed. This is broken down on pages 20 to 24 in the NOFO. So big picture, you can see that the executive summary it's required, but it's not scored. So that's what everybody starts off with. And then you'll see that out of 100 possible points, there are 50 points that can be scored in program design, 25 that can be scored in organizational capability, and 25 that can be scored in cost effectiveness and budget adequacy. And then each of these sections are broken down, or categories are broken into subcategories. And if you do not address each subcategory, you cannot earn the points associated with it. So it's very important that you address all of those subcategories. And like I said, in the NOFO, it breaks down what is required to be addressed in each of those subcategories. So you'll want to make sure that you're really referring to the NOFO. You will see when you go to enter your narrative into eGrants that the application is already organized into several narrative fields. The categories: executive summary, program design, organizational capability, cost effectiveness, and budget adequacy, and evaluation plan summary. We recommend that you also label each subcategory in your application to ensure that the application is clearly organized for reviewers. And as I mentioned, there's an 11-page narrative page limit. So all of these categories, subcategories have to be addressed in those 11 pages. And those 11 pages include the face sheet. The logic model has an 8-page limit, and the logic model, even though that has a separate page limit, it's not included in that 11 pages, right? It has its own 8-page limit. It is scored as part of the community and logic model, right? You see community and logic model is worth 20 points. So the logic model is important there. In addition to ensuring that you address each category and subcategory and follow the guidance related to the page limits, it's also necessary that you demonstrate that you meet the threshold for the grant type and strategic considerations for the program being proposed. So look at more information on threshold issues that can be found on page 10 of the NOFO. All right. So AmeriCorps funding priorities. So this year, the funding priorities section is worth 4 points. That's a bit of a difference from past years where it was worth 0 points. So you might want to focus a little bit more time and energy on it this year. And on the next slide, well, okay, so you'll see that there, and in the NOFO, we'll break this down a little bit more, but the AmeriCorps has identified 4 funding priorities: serve communities, benefit AmeriCorps members, use evidence, and faith-based organizations. And we'll break down that serve communities one a little bit further, because the other ones are pretty self-explanatory, but serve communities has a number of different goals. That's youth behavioral health, veterans and military family, public safety partnerships, outdoor recreation and green space, workforce development. And those have changed. This has changed since last year. This is like a pretty common thing that changes year to year. So I would encourage you to check out the funding priorities. And in addition to the AmeriCorps funding priorities, we also have Tennessee state funding priorities. And these are Tennessee distressed counties, prisoner mentorship, capacity for volunteer success, and disadvantaged and underrepresented youth. And so programs might receive additional consideration for fitting into one of those funding priorities. So next we'll look at the logic model, which, as I mentioned, is scored as part of the narrative, but it has its own page limit, right? That's an 8-page limit. So this can be a really intensive document. So the logic model includes inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. And you want to make sure that it is really thorough, right? If you're missing, and the NOFO, this information I'm about to share comes straight from the NOFO. So you should be able to include all of the requirements as described in the NOFO. So the inputs are the locations where your members will be serving, the setting where your members will be serving, the number of AmeriCorps members who will deliver the intervention, the characteristics of AmeriCorps members that will be serving. So those are your inputs, and the core activities, you have to include the length of each activity and the dosage of each activity. So length is like the total number of weeks, sessions, or month of the intervention. The dosage is the number of hours per session. I feel like I see that quite common, that folks won't include the dosage or won't include the length or won't include the skills of an AmeriCorps member, and then you're just simply not going to be able to earn full points for your logic model. You also have to include outputs, and those are measurable outputs from delivering the intervention. That will include the national performance measures that you've identified. It may also include other indicators that are not associated with a national performance measure. But if you're using, well, everybody's using a performance measure, you should indicate, if you're using a national performance measure, you should indicate the number and like the title of the performance measure, the outcome, and the output and the outcome. And similarly, if you're using an applicant determined performance measure, include that in your logic model. And outcomes are what result from the intervention. So those are meaningful changes in knowledge, skills, attitude, behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So important things to remember here are to reference your performance measures in your logic model, that you're not required to measure all the components of your logic model. So you can include outcomes that you might not measure. Applicants with multiple interventions should include required information for each intervention in the logic model. So make sure you're addressing all of the different activities, focus areas, performance measures. All right, so I've said a lot about performance measures. Now we should probably talk about those. So these are crucial for demonstrating the impact of your AmeriCorps program. It's mandatory that all applicants submit one aligned performance measure, at least one aligned. You can have multiple. And those are going to include an output and an outcome. So this ensures that your program is tracking what it's doing and the change it's making. Your performance measure needs to align with your primary intervention. So your core activity or your strategy that you'll use to address the community need needs to align with the performance measure. So if your program is focused on education, your performance measure should reflect education outcomes. You'll notice the performance measures are kind of broken up by focus areas. So maybe you choose something for student outcomes if you were using that education example. And as I've mentioned before, you can use a national performance measure. Those are great. There are many of them. Or you can create your own tailored to your specific program. Important things to keep in mind here: quality over quantity. It's better to choose high quality, meaningful measures than to report on too many things. And it's not just high quality, but things that you're capable of reporting on, right? You don't want to choose a performance measure that is going to be really difficult for you to track. The goal here is to have clear, impactful data that shows the difference your program is making in the community, and to track the success of your program. So you want to be making reasonable goals, and making sure that you can track the progress that you're making towards those goals. So make sure that you're being realistic, make sure that your goals are achievable, and be prepared to track and report that data throughout the program year. All right, so we'll just go over some common pitfalls, some mistakes that folks make that might lead to a lower score. So if your narrative, your budget, your performance measures don't match, of course, as we just talked about, right, your performance measures have to align with your narrative. Your budget should really reflect the activities that you proposed. Performance measures mistakes, as I mentioned, no aligned measures. Those unrealistic targets are a big one. You don't want to be setting goals that you can't meet. Budget errors, missing requirements, those attachments, making sure that you complete that OFMS, making sure that you select the correct ID. We'll get into e-grants. That's kind of an e-grants technical application thing. Last minute submission, and I'll add this one, late submissions. And there is even a lateness section in the NOFO. So if you are late or anticipating being late, you'll want to refer to that. And overpromising, targets too high, capacity not demonstrated, member supervision unclear. I think that comes down to a lot of times folks will restate what was asked of them to describe in the criteria, right? It'll say like, describe how your members will be trained, and folks will say members will be trained, and that is not really answering the question. So let's get into e-grants. I teased this a little bit, so this is just a screenshot of the platform. So e-grants is where you'll input this narrative, logic, model, performance measures once you've already been working on them. Well, and we suggest that you work separately in like another document, because e-grants can be a bit finicky and lose your work. And also because of these page limits, you'll want to make sure that everything meets the page limits. All right, so once you've prepared your narratives, you start entering them in e-grants, and there are several areas. You start off with applicant info. You'll put in your organization info. You'll input your narratives, your logic model, your performance measures. You will note whether certain documents have been submitted, and then you'll also enter your budget information. Once you've entered all that required information, you'll review, authorize, you'll go to the review, authorize, and submit page. You'll review it for completeness. You'll have your appropriate certifying official click the buttons to authorize the submission, agree to the assurances and certifications, and verify that the application narratives, budget, performance measures are validated without error, and then you'll submit it to Volunteer Tennessee. So that submission process, or this creating a grant and submitting it in e-grants, here are some basic steps for that. So you'll go to the bottom of your page, you'll start a new grant application, you'll select AmeriCorps, you'll want to select this FY26 AmeriCorps State and Territory Mission Fix and EUP, and you want to select Tennessee. And then on the next page, this is where, so we're sharing these prime application codes. So formula programs, you can also find the formula codes on our website. Competitive folks, we're sharing those primes here. So you will select the appropriate prime for your application. And then choosing a program name, I don't really know if this is, oh yeah, I suppose this is the next step. So this is like the first step you get into when you are in eGrants, you'll choose a program name. And this should be the name that you're going to refer to your AmeriCorps program as. So for example, the Appalachian Regional Coalition on Homelessness, they're going to put their Housing First Service Corps as their program name. All right, so as we talked about, your applications are assessed against the criteria in the NOFO. You should also be aware that selected applicants will have to comply with requirements from the Uniform Administrative Requirements, cost principles and audit requirements, the National Service Criminal History Check requirements, and those are described in the NOFO. You might want to get a head start and look into those things as well. And the remaining pages of the NOFO have great resources for you. All right, what else can we share? So other ways to get involved. So whether or not AmeriCorps is the right fit for you, we'd also love to see you get involved with our other initiatives. So you could partner with current national service programs, right? Maybe applying for an AmeriCorps grant is too much for your agency right now, but you'd love to host an AmeriCorps member as a host site. So you want to connect with an existing AmeriCorps program and become a partner. Maybe you want to become an employer of national service so that AmeriCorps alumni looking for roles can find you. Maybe you want to join us at the Tennessee Conference on Volunteerism and Service Learning, or the Governor's Volunteer Stars Awards coming up next month. Or maybe you, in the future, maybe you want to present at our conference, or you know somebody who would be a great honoree for the Governor's Volunteer Stars Awards. And you can also get involved with our Days of Service, Martin Luther King Day, Make a Difference Day, 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance. We just had an event for MLK Day, so there won't be another one for a little while. And those come up periodically, but keep an eye out for different events that we might have. And then lastly, I think, is our important websites. A note about the AmeriCorps website, it's currently under renovation. They still have good resources. And the NOFO links to the AmeriCorps website several times. So check out those links in the NOFO. Also, of course, visit our website, specifically the funding opportunity page. And then, of course, you'll want to familiarize yourself with eGrants. That's another big thing, is eGrants can have a bit of a learning curve, and you don't want to wait until the last minute to get into eGrants and figure that out. All right. Okay, so we've reached our final Q&A. I don't know if I see anything in the chat. We have 10 more minutes. I'd be happy to. Okay, so here's one. We've got funding priorities. Can we repeat funding priorities? Yeah, so the funding priorities. Right, so the AmeriCorps funding priorities are serve communities, benefit AmeriCorps members, use evidence, and faith-based organizations. And VT has our own funding priorities: distressed counties, prisoner mentorship, capacity for volunteer success, disadvantaged and underrepresented youth. Are there any other questions? Am I missing anything? All right, well, if there aren't any questions, I'll just leave you with our contact information. I am Lizzie Lemieux. I'm the AmeriCorps Program Manager. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that earlier, but you can reach me by email or by phone. I work closely with Latifa, who is not in office this week, but you can also connect with her. Although, quite honestly, just connect with both of us. CC us on all emails. we'd love to hear from you. All right, well,
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't look like we have any additional comments or questions in the chat. It doesn't look like we have any hands raised. So thank you all for joining us. We look forward to hearing all of the questions that you may have. We look forward to the interactions that we may come across with you this year, where any initiatives that Volunteer Tennessee has going on. If you have any additional questions, or like Lizzie stated, maybe need a little bit more technical assistance, specific questions for your program, please don't hesitate to reach out. And that is all that we have for you guys for today. Please look for us to post the recording of this. We were waiting until after today, of course, but our goal is to have this downloaded and posted on our website in case you want to circle back and review or re-listen to anything. So we definitely plan to have that up by end of business tomorrow, maybe a little bit earlier, but I can send out an email to everybody to let everybody know. But we've recorded this to the cloud, so you should have access to it. But if not, it'll be on our website where the NOFO information is.
And Candace, sorry if someone already mentioned this, but the priorities document that's posted in the chat is the AmeriCorps document and does not contain the Tennessee priorities. So be sure that you're looking at the Tennessee specific notice when you're looking at the priorities for both AmeriCorps and the state of Tennessee.
Is that you? All right. Well, if we don't have any additional questions, thank you all for joining us today. As I said, we look forward to connecting with you soon. You guys enjoy your Thursday and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, everybody. Thanks all to the attendees. Thank you so much.